Hello, I'm Victor Antunes, the Autism Dad and the Inclusive Miami Realtor. Today I'm with Farides García. She is the President, CEO of Parent to Parent of Miami. They are a program that works with special needs kids, autistic, intellectual disabilities, what have you, all that fall under that umbrella. Now, Farides, you guys have been in the Miami area for how long?
Since 1988. So we've been around for 36 years now. Yeah.
That was the year I graduated high school.
Well, there you go.
Can you imagine?
There you go.
We're about to have our 40th year graduation.
Yep.
Time flies.
Time does fly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So 88. You know, this year has changed not that much. I mean, this was already kind of developed when you guys moved in here.
So Parent to Parent of Miami came to be with a group of parents that just wanted to find support out in the community. It was part of that big parent movement that started with special education law and the whole bit, and you were just finding people that wanted to find other parents that understood the struggles and the joys of having a child with a disability. And so it just a group of people that got together, and then it got formalized into incorporating, then turning into a parent resource center, a 501c3, and we've just continued the mission work to empower and support a network of parents who have children with disabilities. So
great.
the work has always been just focused on that, helping another parent.
So you talk about this parent movement. Educate me on the history.
Well, IDA law, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Law, actually they're celebrating their 50 years because it came to be in 1975. It was the All Handicapped Children Act, and then it got changed to IDA. And so it is a law that provides, federal law that provides special education services for students with disabilities in public school systems. And so part of the law is that you have parent centers like ours that are funded to provide the information and resources to help other parents be able to navigate school system, community, and the needs of their children.
That's great. So you do a lot of workshops. I know because I get different newsletters and you're in them. You have all these different services you offer. Now, I have an autistic daughter. She's 8 years old now. She was diagnosed at 3. So if I was a new parent coming into the system with Parent to Parent, where would I start?
Well, the first thing would be we take down your information. We are grant funded, so I always say that's the way that you give back. We can provide that you are a real person to our funders, and we just start a process with you. We'll ask you, what have you looked into? What information medically you already have for your daughter? What have you done and what are you seeking? And then we go from there. So you would be paired with one of our education support specialists, which is also a parent of a child with a disability. So I think that's one of those things that make us very unique, is that it's a true peer-to-peer model. It is a parent helping another parent. So you would then, speak to our education support specialist, and they'll ask you, what are you looking for, where you're at, and then if you need to be referred to, let's say if she's young, early intervention, we can, directly refer you to early steps. If a little older in the steps, there may be child find, and we help you what to expect, the timelines to keep it fair, right? So that you know what your rights are as you're waiting for services, and help you after those evaluations. And then usually it's, they're daunting to hear the confirmation that yes, that there is a disability, that something's not, that our children are not, developing like their typical peers. And so we help out in many different ways, not only for those meetings and those initial evaluations, and then what does it mean, how to develop the educational plan for our children when they're in school, and then helping as well with the family component, kind of letting you know that it's a journey that you may be beginning.
A very long journey.
A very long journey.
Lifelong.
A very long journey, but like our tagline of hope, help, and support, that's what we want to do. We want to provide the parents the hope that they need to know that yes, things can get better. The help that they need so they can make good choices that's good for them, for their child, for their family, and support them along a journey. So we're here for all disabilities and all age groups, and it should be a process. But it's not one done alone, because there is a lot of emotion that comes in with having a child with a disability. And so we want to help you be able to champion for those good days and kind of help you along in the days that sometimes, life throws that curveball that you weren't expecting. And we hope to be here for that process as well.
Now, you mentioned Child Find. For the benefit of the parents listening that might not know what that is, can you explain that?
Sure. So Child Find is what's available here. It's called Fiddlers for children that are 3 and above. And and then they help with the school system. So it's for those kids that are a little too old for early intervention, and they start with the process of evaluation and being able to see those psychoeducational evaluations. What do they mean? Is there a delay? And then would special education services be appropriate? And then you would start being able to be eligible for services in the school system as well, in the pre-K system.
I had my daughter evaluated at Fiddler South in South Miami. She was just about to turn 5, so we were still within their umbrella. Before they are 3, can you explain that?
Yeah, so early intervention, which is great. If you can start early, the better it is.
What is the program name?
It's called Early Steps here in Florida. It's called Early Steps. We have Early Steps South and North. And that's our early intervention program, again funded through IDA. There is a Part C for early intervention. And so it's the same process. Like for us here, we can directly refer out to the appropriate program and be able to then have them go through this evaluation process and see, is there something that has a bit of a concern that maybe this child would benefit from therapies. And so they can go in the Early Steps program up to the age 3, and then they transition into what we have here in Miami-Dade County, which is pre-K 3, exceptional student education.
Right.
Yeah.
So 0 to 3 is Early Steps.
Early Steps.
3 to 5 is Fiddlers. After 5, then what?
Well, you're in the school system, so then you would be referred through the school system and be able to say, so each parent that has a concern, right, and they see their child is struggling, the grades are not doing well, and that happens a lot sometimes as kids get into like that 1st and 2nd grade. Maybe they've navigated just enough, but then there is that issue that comes up. They're not keeping up with their peers, they're struggling with their schoolwork. A parent does have a right to seek an evaluation through the school system to see, is there an issue at hand in order for them that is hampering their education. And if that's the case, then they can become a special education student with an IEP, right, with an individualized education plan, which helps them then tailor for the needs of that student.
Now, I was told by Fiddlers that, and they encouraged us like very strongly to have our daughter evaluated for 5, because then after 5, they would go into the public school system. It was more complicated, not quite kid-friendly. Can you explain that to me?
Well, it's just on timelines. So sometimes you have timelines that they need to meet by a certain, and then it just depends on volumes too. There's a lot more students once they hit the school system, but it is supposed to be within a 90-day evaluation. That you do have, that evaluation begin and so forth. So it is a process. And I think that you are right and that's where parents get lost, right? Parents get lost because we hear a lot, well, I already told the teacher nothing has happened. And we're like, well, that's not the process. You need to put it in writing. You need to turn it into a school system. You need to, you need to talk to the assistant principal, that person that's in charge of ESE, and help you with that piece. So we help them what to gather even. And kind of being able to say, okay, you haven't heard, check in with them, see where they're at. We help them kind of hold their hand as much as they want us to, or at least guide them, right? We want to guide them to what's the next step. So once that evaluation is done, what's supposed to happen? What is that meeting going to look like? And be able to explain, that piece so that they're not, it's very intimidating to sit across the table with a lot of professionals and you feel like, I know nothing. But what we want to let the parents know that they are the expert in their child's education.
Yes, that's true.
Knowing their child.
Wow.
May not know the goals, but they know their child.
My wife is the foremost expert on my daughter, and I'm the world's second foremost expert.
Right. And you're both her best cheerleader.
We are.
And that's what you need to. That's what we encourage our parents, to not feel intimidated, to learn. So we encourage them that there is time and investment that they need to make. They need to make time to come to our workshops. They need to make time to inform
as early
themselves.
as possible.
Yes, and think ahead a little bit. So if your child now is, for example, in early steps, and they're going to be transitioning into, the pre-K program, we have a training for that. Come early, so So by the time you have that transition meeting, you know what to expect. They're in pre-K now. They're going to go into kinder. Things change, so it all evolves with time. And so if you get that information ahead of time, then maybe you don't feel as lost, right? You feel a little bit more empowered with that information. And then to be able to be an active participant and to not be afraid to ask questions and not be afraid to express their concerns. And when they don't agree, then to voice it. It is a right.
Now you talk about with parents with IEP meetings sitting across the table from a bunch of professionals. Now I know that there are paid advocates that can go in there with you.
Sure.
Does parent to parent or other programs provide like pro bono advocates?
Yeah, we do. We go with our parents.
You do.
We go with our parents and we provide that advocacy support. We work with about 1,500 families a year. So we can't do it to every family, but there are cases that are really important, especially when the conversations have really stagnated, right? And that maybe the relationship hasn't been the best. And so we're able to step in, help that parent, kind of get everybody talking at the table. And so yes, like us, they are paid advocates, but we provide the information for free and no cost, because we know that our community is a very needy community. It's very expensive to do that. And we have worked very collaboratively with the school system for many years. So we have a good relationship. And we typically will reach out when there is something that needs to be really looked at. We have the ability to reach out to the appropriate people in Miami-Dade County Public Schools to say, there's an issue here that I think your team really needs to look at. And we work with them. I think that what we try to do is not be adversarial. I don't think you gain anything by being adversarial. You try to come in with we both want what's best for that student. And if we keep that in mind, then we should work towards that goal. It doesn't mean that sometimes you have to escalate, and it's appropriate to be able to draw up the chain of command, but you do it in a correct way, respectful way, and with a working relationship, which is what we always want to do, and encourage our parents to do the same. Yeah.
Now, some of these issues that you're talking about that come up, are there some that come up more than others, and how can parents maybe like cut them off before they become something major?
It all depends. There's always the issue of, is my child not getting the right services, or maybe sometimes people come up, they have issues with the speech and OT, the therapies that are provided in school. Maybe they think they should have more. It all depends. Every student is different, or it could be that maybe the teacher isn't implementing the IEP the way that it's written. So we try to have an approach where we say, okay, you have to realize that, it's not, you want the teacher. Maybe the teacher doesn't sometimes even know that IEP exists. So be proactive, right? So we always tell our parents, be proactive in your things, be courteous, set it up as a working relationship. I think that if you set it up as a working relationship and how we can best do what's best for this child, everybody will typically buy in to that, because that is ultimately what everybody wants.
Yes.
The best for that student, and have that buy-in. And so as a parent, like I said, you sometimes know where the struggles for your child. So you can say, when the school system, school year starts, for example, if your child has a difficulty adjusting, that's a parent-teacher conference. This teacher is entrusted with X number of students. And so you need to have your child stand out in a good way and have her understand their needs, and you work with them in order to bring what they're doing in school to the house as well. And that's where that partnership can grow. Yeah.
Now with this population of kids, we have the IEPs, we also have the 504s.
Right.
Is that something you also help parents with?
Yes.
And what's the difference?
Well, the difference is that the 504 really comes through ADA, right? The Disabilities Act. And so it sometimes is used for medical needs, different types. So sometimes the 504, the difference is the IEP comes with federal monies. And sometimes that's what, people don't realize. The 504 is a plan that's put in. Sometimes it might be temporary for that student. Typically you have for students who have medical needs, sometimes the ADHD students also fall in with the 504 plan. And there are different accommodations that the parents, that the school can put in, but it's not as formalized as the IEP. So the IEP is an actual legal document that, is supposed to be upheld by the school. And whatever's rated in the IEP should be what is provided for that student long term. And the good thing with that comes in the different funding that can come in to support those needs of the students.
Now, speaking of monies, having a special needs kid is much more expensive than a neurotypical kid.
Yeah.
So one major expense out there is diagnostics. Now, we have evaluations, which are free at Fiddlers and Early Steps and in the schools. And then we have diagnoses, which are actually quite expensive. Is there a grant program for that?
No, there isn't.
No, there's not.
And I think that that's a challenge. I think that, living in the world of disability, it's challenging in many ways, and financial is one of them. We try to help the parents find, sometimes there are agencies that might be providing the services at low cost, or even sometimes no cost, depending on the income levels. You can have other agencies that might be providing those services as well, but it is costly. And I think one of the things we try to tell parents and have them understand that the school system doesn't diagnose, right? They find their child eligible under special education law, right? You can have a diagnosis, which is the medical component of things. And typically if you have that, it facilitates those evaluations, because you already have something in writing from the neurologist, from a psychiatrist or psychologist for that child's needs. But I think it is very difficult. That's why, we really do encourage our parents to take advantage of the, things that can happen through the school system. Because, every 3 years a child is encouraged, should be having a reevaluation, right? Children's needs for the IEPs, of course.
Because they expire.
Well, they expire annually. So your IEP, you have to sit there and you do that annually. But every student is entitled to every 3 years a reevaluation, because our students' needs. So if your IEP is based on the needs of the students, it is based on that psychoeducational evaluation. And so as the students' needs change, it should be reflected in that evaluation of what needs to happen next.
Now this 3-year evaluation, you're saying that every kid is entitled to it,
Sure.
even the regular population of kids?
No, this is all, remember, we're
Okay.
geared towards the special education law, right? That comes through special education law.
Right.
And it could be a full evaluation, or it can be, maybe a smaller, lesser scale, but it all depends. If you have a student whose needs has drastically changed, then there's no way to base goals and metrics for their plan unless you have an evaluation at hand. So all those little things are what we encourage our parents to learn about when we do, for example, our workshops. We do Saturday trainings on IDA and IEP. And they're 4 hours long. It's 2 hours just on IDA and 2 hours on the IEP. But you get to learn what the law says, your rights as a parent, the safeguards that are there. You get to learn about the educational plan and what that means. What does that have in there? How do you measure these things? When are things supposed to happen? Who's in charge of making sure? And and as a parent, you need to know that IEP, because if not, you can have a great IEP, you can hang it on the wall if you don't know how to follow it, how to ask questions. We do a lot of things with letting parents know, have you gone into your child's portal? Some parents don't even know there's a student portal they can go into, and the eye reading and the different test levels that are in there. So those are things that gear towards that success of that student. And so as a parent, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. But that's just part of being a parent sometimes too. Disability or not disability, you're still tracking your child's success and their struggles to see how you can make it better for them. Yeah.
Now the portal, what is it called, and how do parents access that?
I'm gonna tell you, Victor, I don't know that one exactly myself, but it is the school portal through the public school system. Every student has their portal. It goes with their student ID. The parents can set up their portal, and you can see everything for that student education-wise is in there. So a lot of times what happens is certain things happen that parents sometimes are not even aware of if they're not paying attention. They do different reading assessments throughout, and that's how they base for that succession. How are they doing with those annual exams that are happening? So if parents keep track, they get to see the grades. So sometimes parents, and we have had parents that their child is in high school or middle school and they're not doing so well, and they don't realize, oh wait, my child has all these F's and zeros for their homework. It's affecting their grade. How are they going to continue the progression? Are they going to meet the credits that they need for school? So a lot of little things that parents need to be aware of. Those are all the little things that we help along the way. That's why I say the information is tailored for that parent depending on where they're at. And so those are little tidbits that sometimes parents don't understand, or maybe they're struggling and they don't know that already they have certain different evaluations that are being placed. The child the teacher might be doing looking at their grades or looking at their results and seeing, do we need to flag this for further support? Yeah.
That's great. I mean, I know that when I was in high school, or at least I don't think these portals existed, which would have been great. I think that's a fantastic
Well,
thing.
it's everything's so digital these days.
Yeah, everything's digital.
Everything's very digital, so it's really good because the parents can sit there. I mean, it could be that it's 11 o'clock at night, and right before you go to bed, and that's the only time you've had free. At some point to stop and look, and even to see, those reading tests are really great because they can see the progression. Because the truth is that if you see that your child is not doing well in school, they're not growing, they're not learning, at some point you need to pause and say, okay, what do we need to do differently for them to become successful students? Which we know that students with disabilities can be very successful students if they're provided the services that they need.
Now, these kids, these special kids, that they're in these programs in the public school, are there some schools you're finding that are better than others? Let's say if you're autistic, high functioning but still autistic, are there some of these public schools that are doing better, more geared towards this population?
It depends. I mean, every school is very different. Some schools have really good ESE programs where you may have a lot of teachers that have the years experience of working with students with disabilities, know how to better handle and gear those students. Other schools, they lag a little. Yeah, there are certain schools that we have to go in and really help that administration along and help them support the student with disabilities.
And is that like up at the program level or at the, let's say the teacher level?
It depends. I mean, every school is different. And the school system will tell you that every school and its administration is different. So, it depends on who is the principal at that school, who the AP is at that school. And I mean, I'd be lying if I wouldn't say that some schools are more ESE friendly than others. That is truth. And have the ability, have the manpower, the resources that are there to serve, and help the student along. But I think that that's when parents have to step in and need to ask. Certain schools don't have all the, not every school has every program.
Of course.
So that's also part of what we try to help our parents navigate. These are your different options, and we say, go ask, make those good questions, ask, so that you're better informed as a parent to put your son or daughter in the different schools, because not every program is available at every school. And so, and the other piece is realizing that not everything is like, etched in stone. You try something, and if it doesn't work out, you find the other options, which is something that we try to champion. A lot of times we're trying to limit our students with disabilities early on as to what they learn, as to what they're exposed to, and why, right? So why not provide the opportunity? Why not provide the ability to see if this little person is able to, learn and grasp concepts? I mean, why are we in a rush to limit what they learn? Provide them that information, provide them the access to a general education classroom with their typical peers, and let's see how they do. They would surprise you. Sometimes we want kids to be, let's say, limited in their academics at a very young age, but you don't know what they might be able to achieve until you give them that opportunity. So why not give opportunities along the way?
Of course. Now, you're saying not every school has got every program. Is there a way that when a parent is evaluating different schools, they can go online and see what the school offers? And if they don't like what that school offers, can they go to any public school they want to?
Right now, with the scholarships, you do have options and you can opt into other schools, and you can do that. You can do it. Sometimes if it's not available in what is your home school, you can look to see what might be available close by and then do that transfer option. So it all depends. Yeah, you can look to see what else is available, always realizing that there are certain caps, and if a school that you might be interested to opt into has already reached their capacity, then you don't have that opportunity.
And is there a way?
It all depends.
on the website to evaluate the school, or you have to just go there?
You would have to go and see, and there are grades in school that are out because the Florida Department of Education does provide school grades. But it's always best to just, find out. And the ESC department does do a pretty good job at giving you the information of what programming is available in different schools, and being able to see what might be your better option, and then things to consider, transportation and all that. So it also depends. Sometimes, you live far away, a parent works closer to another school, maybe that would be a way to get them to another different school area because you're closer to that. So there's different ways right now. I don't think it's so set in stone that you have to go only to your home school. You don't have to. You can opt into different ways through, different portals and scholarships and stuff to be able to move to another adjacent school that might maybe fit the needs better. And usually the ESC team will try to get you to the best available and tell you, well, these are your different options that are available. And then you kind of start looking in to see what would be best.
And the scholarship, can you unpack that for the parents that aren't familiar?
So Florida has what we call now step-ups. And so there are different scholarships. They've changed names throughout the years. Right now, there used to be, there's one that's very geared towards those students with exceptional needs, with disabilities. So you can do it that way. There's also for kids that are low income. So there's different levels, different scholarships, which you can then use to move that student into, let's say, a private school setting, and then use the funding that would go into typically the public school. It brings the funding along to another school if that is something so it's that school choice programming that is available. There's also scholarships to help with, let's say, reading, and gives a small credit for reading, and tutoring and things like that, or home programs as well. So it's just different ways. They have evolved through the years where there are a lot more options now.
Now for this tutoring, is there a set amount or is that case by case?
I believe it's case by case, and it all depends on the need of the student.
Okay.
So funding goes along with that need that is provided, that matrix number that appears with an IEP. So
is there
it depends
a cap?
on the $10,000.
$10,000. Okay.
Typically it's $10,000 unless you have a very high-end need, medically complex students, and it's more.
Okay. You also spoke about transportation. Now, I've done my research and I haven't confirmed. I've just seen the website that there is a transportation stipend. I think it's $750. Do you know about this?
Not a lot.
Yeah,
Like I said, there's a lot of new things that have come in, but they are providing certain, and I think it's one of them. Because what happens a lot too is once you're out of a radius of a school, the bus system and so forth can't cover you. So yeah, just like there's a reading program, I think that one's like $500. They're provided for an extra reading support for a student and things like that.
And I've also been to a lot of schools, like just when they're letting out, and you'll see all these vans from, it's called STS, Special Transportation Service. So for parents that might have transportation woes, they can look at STS. Do you work with them or?
Sure. Well, those one of the agencies that we can refer to. Make sure that parents are hooked up, because STS works not just with schools; it works with
seniors,
helping you.
Of course.
Well, yeah, seniors as well. But like for us, we can have a student that needs to get to therapy, let's say, and they are home after school with grandmother, and she doesn't drive. Well, if they are on STS, they can go to the therapy and back, and it's provided for people with disabilities. So
at a very nominal fee.
Typically, I think it's $4 now. Yeah, it's $4. So it could be that you have an adult in an adult day program, and they can, like my son is in an adult day program. David is 26, and he has autism, and so he can go to his adult day program on STS. We have people that they go to work on STS, so it is a great program that's available for that you have to have medical a write-up form and so forth, but once you're in, you can utilize it for many different things. Or it could be as a young adult that is being independent and might be able to take themselves to work, or they can incorporate that along with, let's say, a bus service. And a leg of work would be STS, another leg would be public transportation, just different needs. But yeah, STS is a great program that's available as well.
That's great. Another thing that as a father of an autistic daughter, she's 8 now, so she's got a long way to go.
Right.
But I worry about the older kids that are aging out of this system. Do you know if the public schools So I've been to like adult centers where they do job training for the adults, but I don't know anything yet about kids who are like 15, 16, 17 that we can start prepping them for the workforce. Is that a thing in the schools?
Sure, it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be. So that's when you get vocational rehab or VR or Voc rehab that is supposed to work with students. In Florida, the transition age went from 14 to 12. So really, at 12 years old, you really can. Typically, you have students really start at 14, 15. They can become VR clients. And so you start with kind of like those prep, right? Having those students kind of understand better, maybe what are their likes and dislikes? What would that future look like? Sometimes the summer they offer summer programs through the VR, and you can take little internships, little things like that. And then later on, what will happen would be that then that student can use VR to help them with, let's say post-secondary employment. So maybe they can, they can participate in, maybe in a certification program where they learn a certain skill and be able to work. And there are a lot of different other agencies that have opened up here to encourage those young adults with disabilities to be part of the workforce. So we know there's so many, and why not tap into that workforce that's very loyal, wants to pitch in and be useful, right? We all want to be a part of a society, and so you have a growing need of that piece, and you do have programs that have stepped in to provide those different trainings for the person with a disability, but also for the employer, so that there is success in what they do. So it's important for that youth to become a VR client, and they can stay VR clients and work through in different ways. So yeah, really important. And we help with that piece as well.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you talked about the transition age going from 14 to 12. Can you tell me about this, exactly what you mean by transition age?
Well, it just means that you want to start having even parents think about their child. It's no longer a child, it's a youth.
At 12, yeah, you're a youth. You're not a child.
You're a youth, you're not a child. You're a youth with a disability. And so, we hear a lot of times that parents have not even been very open about explaining the disability to their child. They don't know how to have the conversation. They're afraid. Their emotions take over. And so, but it's important for this youth to understand, that they may think a little differently, maybe it takes them a little longer, but that just makes them who they are. And so to really understand, so that at the end of it, what you want is really to have good self-advocates. For those that can, you want to have that youth be able to understand their disability. So what makes them, their likes or dislikes, where they struggle, where they shine, so that they can then express that to others around them and be able to then become good self-advocates for themselves. To say, well, I really have this material, but I really, I learn better when I hear it, let's say on an audio book, or I do better with a visual of something. It's speaking for themselves, so that then they become independent for their future. So if you're in college and you understand your disability, you can say, well, I'm going to sit further, ahead in the classroom because I need to hear better with the professor. Or you can ask someone, would you mind sharing your notes with me? Or you let the professor know, I'm going to be taping because I need to hear the information audibly. So you get towards that. So the idea is that if you bring it down maybe to 12, then we start having these honest conversations with our children, right? Prepping them for the world around them, prepping them to be part of our society, part of our community, and help them so that they can be successful later on.
Now these conversations, they're happening at VR, or they're happening everywhere?
They're happening everywhere, they have to start at home, right?
Of course.
You have to start at home. Some parents are really afraid to tell their kids that they have a disability, but sometimes we'll say, well, do you realize that your child is struggling? They know that there's something different about them. So sometimes you might even kind of be having this aha moment, for them, and realize, yeah, that's right. The best thing is to have our children with a disability for, who comprehend, right? Who can get it, that to say, you happen to have autism, you happen to have, X, whatever it may be. But that's just who you are. It doesn't limit you, doesn't define you. It's just that that's why, the noises might bother you or the lights might bother you, but you're an excellent concentration for learning and writing because that's your skill. That's what you like to do. Or it's math, or it could be drawing, or whatever it may be, Knowing there, like all of us, we have to learn our good things and our, not so good things. So, we work on the things that we might be weaker at, to get ourselves better. And that's what you do. And having them be able to express themselves without, limitation or judgment. We all have our good moments and our moments that we need assistance with, and it's okay to ask for help. And I think that if you start young enough, and we see it, you see those kids do well, and they could just say, well, I just, the lights bother me because I happen to have autism, and it could be a natural conversation, or it could even between siblings, right? I know that for us, like my oldest son, it was good for him to know that his brother had autism. That's what made him have difficulty speaking and communicating and playing and being part of the group. So it's not that he's somebody odd and crazy. It just he happens to have that limitation, but you draw him in so it helps others and be able to have you be part of the group, have you be part of the family. Everybody needs to understand so that everybody can support one another.
Yeah, I would say my entire family knows my daughter's autistic. We never kept it in the closet.
Sure.
But I will say this, that my wife and I, our aha moment was around 2.5. My daughter was born very just neurotypical, and then she had a regression, but we were first-time parents.
Right.
So her behavior, I just thought, oh, how cute.
Right.
I didn't know that it was off. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And then it was actually my mother-in-law who read us a riot act. She says, something is up with your daughter. You need to wake up and have her evaluated.
Sure.
So it was that conversation that was our aha moment. And it's not that we were in denial, we just didn't know what we didn't know. But as soon as somebody pointed out, we're like, yeah, you know what, it is cute because it was cute at that age. Everything's cute at that age.
Everything's cute when they're little. Everything's cute when they're little.
Everything's cute. But we were never in denial. We just didn't know what we didn't know. And as soon as somebody told us, we had her evaluated. We had her evaluate fiddlers. And by the way, they were excellent. They were super nice. It was like a 2 or 3 month process, which I found to be reasonable.
Right.
Right, because it's a big school system.
Sure, yeah.
And they were always very nice. They were very thorough. I mean, the test that we did there was like military grade. But they were super nice, and it was a fantastic process. So it's nothing to be scared of.
Sure, yeah.
But autism is scary. I still
is.
remember when somebody told, we went to go see a psychiatrist friend. She said, look, I think your daughter's autistic. The drive home, my wife's like, stop the car, I can't breathe. She's like hyperventilating, she's like crying and stuff. Me on a man, so I was just being stoic. But it is scary.
But it's scary, and it's not fun, and it's not what you want to hear if you're going to be honest about it.
No.
It doesn't mean that we don't love our children. It doesn't mean that you'll not do whatever it will take for them. But it is scary, and it's not part of how it's supposed to be, right? It's just different. So I like to call it the new normal. It's a new normal that you develop, and it's new dreams that you start to develop, as parents, I mean, it's always that, you think of parenting as, your ideal child and everything's gonna go smoothly. But when you have that bump in the road, there are emotions along the way. I mean, I remember being scared and, hearing it, and I thought there was something, and when they confirm it, it pierces your heart if you're gonna be truth. If you're going to be true about it. I think that it's in moving on that's the important piece. To acknowledge those feelings, to acknowledge that scare factor, because I think the future is always scary. The not knowing is always scary. And a lot of times what happens, Victor, is that a lot of doctors and professionals don't give you the better outlook. They always give you a very bleak outlook. And we don't do our kids a favor, right? Because all kids get to react, respond, grow, develop in their own unique ways. Because even within the spectrum of autism, everybody takes different course. You might have things that are similar, but you have, very big differences in the outcomes. But it's allowing them time to grow, time to, that's why I always like to say exposing them. You just never know where you're going to get with that child, but it is scary. And that's one of the things that we try to do. That's why for us that parent to parent, peer to peer model is really important. It's one parent helping another parent along, in a journey. And the journeys might be a little different because maybe the disabilities are a little different, but at the core, it's a family, it's a parent really trying to get it, really trying to understand their child, and getting them to a better place, and allowing them. Sometimes people have heard really terrible things about their kids, and their kids have done magical things, and that's what you want to have. I don't like sharing false hope, right? Sometimes there are certain limitations. I myself, I have to admit, my son at 26 is not, he is limited in what he can ask and request. He still needs supervision. He needs help with safety, but he's an incredible young man as well. And does, he's independent and does things on his own. And so you balance that, and you try to bring every step of life. You just kind of, deal with it where you're at the moment, and not look, I always say, don't look too far ahead, just enough to keep you going, and to inspire you, and to listen, and to talk to other people and see what else is new out there to get to, to where you need to be, but allowing them opportunities. And at the same time, facing the realities that sometimes it is difficult. It's hard to say, well, someone, is not going to, graduate school with with a normal diploma to go on to, that college that you may have thought of as this little baby is born, or having these amazing conversations with somebody, and it's so difficult, and the day-to-days become difficult. Yeah, there are disabilities that are very impactful every day for a lifetime.
Yes.
But you have parents that step in to do it, and realizing that, I think part of it also is growing as a parent in your role, in becoming that advocate for your child, hopefully becoming an advocate for others as well, because I think it's important that what you have learned you can pass on to other people, and sharing your knowledge and your encouragement and your support with someone else. And then realizing that we're not here forever, so planning ahead as best you can, with the ability that you can, and not to beat yourself up. I think it's really important as parents.
It's not your fault.
No, and don't beat yourself up. Sometimes, and there are decisions that are made and maybe it wasn't the best one. Say, okay, well then, let's adjust course. Right? It's a sailboat. You adjust the course. Yes. The waves sometimes come really, really tall, and you have to adjust, but you adjust. And when you need extra help and you need extra support, reach out to people that can help you. Reach out to others. I think that one of the things that I'm most proud of in here as an organization is that every education support specialist is different. We have our own backgrounds, our own knowledge base, our own experiences, and sometimes that's what you need to maybe open up a different way of looking at life, or a different approach at something, or a different strategy, and maybe that's the key to success for that little person or big person at the moment.
Now, speaking of our kids' futures, we don't want to project on them, but there are things that we as parents can do. Think about guardianship, special needs trust. Can we start with the trust? What is your take on them?
So, it all depends. So, we have to think that at 18, disability or not, this person is an adult, and legally. So, any contract that they sign, any purchase that they make, it's made as an adult. And sometimes they may not have the ability to make the best decisions. So guardianships come into play for that. It's a process, and there are different levels of guardianship. So from where you take all the rights away to where you might have just let's say a power of attorney, or medical needs, or a guardian advocacy that's in place now. All the different levels. So it goes with that person, right? This now adult, and you need to evaluate, are they able to make decisions for themselves? Sometimes yes, of course they can. And all they need maybe is they want to have mom or dad or a brother just help them in the process, right? Or it may be that, maybe they can handle things, but the medical piece they still need help with. So you get, so it all depends, you can tailor it, but for those that really are impacted by their disability, then it's a full process where you have to get a guardianship in place. And it is a long process, and it's evaluated by 3 independent professionals that deem if that person is able to make decisions on their own or not. And you come in front of a judge. It's a whole legal process. It's lengthy, it's costly, it needs to get reported every year what you're doing for this person, because you've deemed this person incapacitated to make their own decisions. And so that's where the parent legally, then the parent or whomever is said to be the guardian, will make those decisions for the course of the lifetime for this individual. And again, there are levels. You may work on the financial or the medical, or you may sometimes take away the right to marry or the right to vote or to drive. And so there's different levels, and that's why it's a legal process. So it usually has to be done with attorneys, and you need to be able to, and it's done by different people who are looking and evaluating the individual, so that when you take away rights, they're taken away for a reason, not just arbitrarily, because it does affect, but I think it's important for parents to know not to jump on like the full guardianship piece, because there are other avenues that might be explored, because once you do that, then you take away all kinds of rights. So if you take away the right for financial, right, decisions and all that, you start affecting the programs that they can get into as adults, the working, the employment piece. So it's thinking on, you don't have to go all the way to full guardianship. Some people just need
a little bit of help.
Power of attorney, a little bit of help, and you have those papers for when you need them, for when you help them with the banking, or when you need them when you go to the, medical professionals to say, because as an adult they can say, I don't want to have my mom or dad with me, or make decisions, and sometimes people can get into trouble.
Yes, and I've heard horror stories.
Yes. And that's what scares everybody. And so, you want to be able to, so you want to get it to where there are different approaches now. They're a little different, because we have seen the fact that you don't need to have a full guardianship at times. You still want to have this adult who can make their decisions, who can live independently, but they may just need a little extra support, and providing that support.
And for the parents that are new to this, Parent to Parent does offer workshops on guardianship for parents. Yes.
We offer all kinds of workshops. So guardianship is one of them. We just had one for Able United for Able Savings Accounts. We have a financial needs trust, which is a whole different one as well, that can be set up for this person, now this adult, so that it doesn't impact their benefits. We give things on what benefits are available, what they may be eligible for, and how to apply for those, how to make those decisions without affecting, those important benefits that are, that are crucial for our adults with disabilities to, to function, to participate, to, for their day-to-day, for their needs. So we try to bring in different professionals that bring in that specialized. So that's why, with being that we work with the entire age group, then you bring in the early programming needs all the way up to, adulthood. And, even looking at high school, okay, what happens, as you progress through school, then like diploma options. Sometimes people don't realize their child may not be graduating with a standard school diploma, and that limits what they can do once they're finished. So well, because it all depends. If you don't have if you have been, let's say, on a modified curriculum, that has changed what you have learned. You're not learning on your standard curriculum. So when you graduate, you're going to be graduating with a special diploma, but you're not graduating with a standard diploma, which means that you can then go to post-secondary and so forth. So you have, a special certificate. You don't have a regular diploma. Or do you have all the credits that you need? So a lot of things that need to be considered. And sometimes these changes have been made, and the parent may not be fully aware of the fact that, and it becomes a surprise to them when they realize, oh wait, my child really isn't learning the standard diploma, the standard curriculum as another student, and the impact that it has, because you're limiting what that child is exposed to. And I think that as we grow, you have to think, we've had, like, for example, just with autism, has a huge wave of kids being diagnosed on the spectrum. It's huge. And so those little kids that are really cute do grow up to be young adults. They're still very cute, but they need support, and they need to have a purpose, and they need to have a place. And we should try to champion for those abilities, to be able to get them to, be able to participate. Everyone has goals in life. Everybody wants to have friends. Everybody wants to go out and be a participant. And that's what we should be striving to do. So so I think that if more people open up to the possibility of, employment and what that would mean, and maybe slowing things down a little bit for this one person, and being more patient, understand. So it depends on the need. You can hopefully get other people to buy in to being different. The problem is our world is always so high tech, and things change from one second to another. We're impatient with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And so imagine what that means when you have a person who does have, let's say, needs a little bit extra time for that processing time before they can answer you, before they can react. We're not even giving them the opportunity to react. And so, you're taking away the ability to have them, maybe, jump in and do something on their own.
Yeah, and speaking of this wave of young people with autism, I think that the parents at a very young age should realize that one day this child, this cute little bundle of joy, is going to be an adult. Mm-hmm. And are they going to be a functional adult? Now, some can function at a very low level, mm-hmm. some at a very high level, mm-hmm. but the younger the parents start with their kids,
sure.
the more that level is going to increase.
Yeah.
I was just at a networking event the other day at community newspapers,
mm-hmm.
and the videographer for Grant Miller, who's always out and about.
Oh, I know Grant, yeah, he's funny.
Well, his videographer, Alex is his name. Alex, I forget his last name. His name is Alex. He's autistic.
Sure.
And he's the videographer
sure.
for Grant Miller, who's a very high level, very high profile
mm-hmm.
Miamian who's
mm-hmm.
always out and about.
Mm-hmm.
And this young man is his videographer. And that's a fantastic job.
Sure.
That's a fantastic job. But I guarantee you that his parents at a very young age had him doing OT and whatever, speech
right.
therapy
right.
to make sure that when that young boy is a young man,
mm-hmm.
he can work.
Sure. And I think that that's part of it too. As parents, we have to also buy into, as young as possible, pushing a little bit that limit, pushing, striving for a little bit more, because you don't know what comes back, and it all goes back to, just because you have a disability doesn't mean that you can't have a 4-year degree, a master's degree. Disabilities are in the workforce. You have very smart engineers, you have very smart, profession here. It could be anywhere. It's just a matter of, sometimes it is a little harder for people to step in, or maybe they're, the way that they react to people, or the noises, or their environment hinders them a little bit, It could be that socialness that's a little harder to break through, right? Being that social, interactive piece. So it all depends. I think that we shouldn't have limitations, because you just don't know. And even if you start little things like, even exposure to dressing on their own, doing things on your own, pushing it, right? For those that can. There's a population that won't and will always need your help, but others can. So again, if you work with that little person in front of you right now, trying to get to the next step, you just don't know when the next step will be. And sometimes what we forget is that with these developmental disabilities, the development is slow. Doesn't mean that they may not. Sometimes they may get something at an early age stage in their 20s, but they got it. You don't know. Or they can just, their disability is not so impactful that they're able to keep up, and they're doing amazing with, honors courses and AP courses and graduating and doing. So what disability looks like, it looks differently for everybody.
It sure does. I always think of my daughter. Obviously, it's my daughter. She's nonverbal. She's 8, but the other day I had a conversation. I did a podcast with a young man. He's in his 30s now. He was nonverbal till he was 14.
Sure.
And then when he started speaking at the age of a 2-year-old, which imagine that's a big regression.
Yeah.
But when you speak to this man on the phone, he speaks flawlessly. So, I mean, that miracle will happen for some, it won't happen for others. You don't know. I never give up hope.
Of course.
We're doing a bunch of therapy with our daughter, at school, and then we also have a tutor comes to the house. And we're just, like what I was always told also with these kids that you can't really communicate directly with, always assume competency in the sense that they're listening. Maybe not the way you and I are listening, but they're listening.
They get it. Yeah,
they get something.
They're listening.
And you can't assume what they're getting, but they're getting something.
Yeah.
So to be very, cognizant of the fact that some of these comments that we might make might not be very nice.
Right.
And to be careful with that because you never know.
You don't know, and I think it's also part of that respect that I think that it should start as parents, and it even translates to when you're talking about them with him or with them in front of teachers, in front of professionals. They're people too, right? So you have to be respectful no matter how young they are.
Yes, of course.
But yeah, it does start where you do as much as you can. You do as much as you can, and then that's why I say, you look ahead a little bit, but just enough to kind of keep you going. But you try not to lose hope along the way. You adjust your sails. Yes, I did the same thing for my son, so I'm with you. David was 18 months old when he was at Easter Seals for early intervention program. Full day, getting his speech, his OT. We did ABA therapy since a young age throughout, and you try the best that you can. And certain things he got, other things he can't. And the other piece too is helping our kids to communicate, because communication doesn't have to just all be verbal, right? There's some kids really doing really great with assistive devices. So why are we not, helping with assistive devices? It could be a great communication piece. And it may just open. I just have someone on staff whose son really had been pretty much nonverbal. And come December, he just started throwing a little word, throwing another little word. And now he's actually doing it, and keeping up. And his device helps him. And he's talking to his mommy and, and saying things. She thought she'd never hear, "I love you, mama." And he got it, So, so those are the things. Does it take time? Yes. And for others, it never comes. That's the truth. Why it happens that way, we still don't know. I think that's a big mystery.
Will always be,
of why. Yeah.
It's the brain.
Yeah, and and why does it happen at 14 and not until then?
Of course.
And why progress and not? So I never thought my son would get math until one day he's just walking around the house and he's just adding numbers in his head. And when I come to think of it, I'm even testing him. I thought, he learned this from like a movie or something. He memorized it. And it wasn't route. He was just, and he's carrying and doing all that. I'm like, well, he got math. There you go. There you go. So you just never, you never know. You keep exposing to your best ability. But I think that also too, as parents, I think it's important not to beat yourself up. Not to beat yourself up when, for whatever reason, it doesn't happen, or you're giving the best you can. And, a lot of these things, going back to the financial piece, are very costly.
Yeah.
And it's a lot to ask. Families sometimes are just barely surviving, putting a roof over their head, food on the table, and doing the day-to-day. And a lot of these things require a lot of extra time that our families, especially here in Miami-Dade County, they're working 2 jobs, both parents trying to get through. So we also need to give a little grace as well.
And speaking of the money side, the parents that aren't really like 100% plugged into the system, they should, and this is why. There's a lot of money out there and programs, like just enrichment programs, free stuff at the library, at the park, where you can go and have a good time. Doesn't cost any money, but they're fantastic. Then there's grants and scholarships.
Sure.
But if you're not plugged in, you're not getting this stuff.
Yeah.
And the parents that aren't plugged in, like parent to parent, you guys do all these workshops that if you pay out of pocket, that's impossible.
Sure. Yeah.
But they're free here.
They're
or
free.
A lot of low cost
and we
stuff.
try to send everything. So everything that we send out. So it's not just talking about our workshops. We do a lot on social media and through our email campaigns on the different programs that are available, on the different activities, because it should be a goal that our children with disabilities are part of the community, that they are in after-school programs, that they are in summer camps, that they are at the library.
So parents, they need to realize it's not just for the kids, it's also for them. That brotherhood, that sisterhood, that community of parents that are just like them, going through the same dilemmas and ordeals. It's so important. I know that I'm pretty sure you guys also have parent support groups for the moms and for the dads. You also have them for the kids and the siblings, right?
Well, we're not offering SIP shops.
Okay.
So, but there are other agencies that are.
And just Google
then
that,
we'll
they're online.
And we'll be able to, to bring them to those places too.
So how can people find Parent to Parent?
It's real easy. All they have to do is give us a call, 305-271-9797.
And the website is?
The website, ptopmiami.org. And so on there we have a lot of information. We also have an intake portal. So now parents can, if they want to start that intake process, they can do it online. The website is completely in English and in Spanish.
Oh, great.
Because we have a big Spanish only population. And they can start, and then we'll give them a call. Like I said, we'll get them with one of the education support specialists and start a process that we hope would be for many years to come. They're here as long as they want to be with us, and with whatever needs come up. So we make it really easy, and it's all free of charge. It's all free of charge, and we do have everybody's fully bilingual here on staff. So that's an important piece for our community here in Miami-Dade County.
Well, Fadi, thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome. No, thank you.
Appreciate it.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.